Hey everyone, and welcome back to Civics Review. Today we're going to be talking about the Articles of Confederation. We're going to be going over what a confederation is, why did the Founding Fathers want one, and what were the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Alright, let's get to it. The Articles of Confederation was actually the first constitution of the United States of America, and so this video's objective is to define what a confederation is. I know we've talked about this before, but it was a long time ago and it was a difficult subject. So we're going to go back and take a look at that. We're also going to list the reasons why the Founding Fathers wanted to try confederation in the first place. And as we find out, there was a lot of weaknesses with this system of government. And on our EOC, our end of course exam, we're going to see lots of questions mostly pertaining to the weaknesses of the Articles. Now, it was called the Articles of Confederation for a reason, because it was a constitution for a confederal system of government. And just as a reminder, because I know you remember this, systems of government are based on central governments and regional or state governments and their balance of power and how they share that power. As a reminder, the central government would be like in our country, Washington, D.C., the president, the Supreme Court, Congress, all the big government stuff. And the regional governments are the state governments, the governor of Florida, the mayor of our city, those kinds of small potato governments. Now, in a confederal system, the regional or the state governments hold all of the power, and the central government has very little to almost no power. In this way, the states act as their own countries almost, and they're unified in a very loose alliance that can come together when threatened in a time of war or emergency. It seems like a very backwards way of doing things, letting the states be the boss of the country's government, but that's how a confederal system works, and that's what our Founding Fathers wanted. Now remember, in 1776, the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, and we became our own country. There was just one small problem, aside from fighting the Revolutionary War at the same time, and that problem is we didn't have a government. And so they immediately got working on creating a rule set or a constitution for this new government. And a lot of students ask me, why? Why did they want this system, which we know now to be not a very strong system of government? And there's a lot of reasons why the Founding Fathers wanted to at least give this a shot. And the big thing on everyone's mind at the time was how bad it was, how bad life was under King George III. A big, strong central government raining down taxes and unfair regulations, of which they felt they had no part in their own government. He had thousands of soldiers occupy the city of Boston. He prohibited the colonists from expanding their territories. He also shut down the port of Boston. I mean, the list goes on. We call it the grievances, and the colonists made a really long list and put it in the Declaration of Independence. So with all of these things in mind, remember the Founding Fathers went to the drawing board and said, okay, a king, not doing that. In fact, we're going to run away as far from that as possible. And what we're really going to do is have no power, or essentially no power, into the central government and let the states handle their own business. And during the Revolutionary War, the Articles of Confederation performed beautifully. It allowed the states to do their own thing, but still kept us unified as a country. It helped us all fight under one flag against the British and kept the dream alive that when all of this was over, we would go back to a nation of self-government where each state could kind of do what it wanted and not really worry about a greater power telling it what to do. You know how the story ends. Everything worked out in the end and we were all happy. Except as it turns out that letting your states run the country and having a uselessly weak central government doesn't really work. So we're going to be looking at the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, and there are many. We're listing just a few here, but understand that there were tons of these weaknesses. And I do want to bring your attention to the fact that this is an alert. These are EOC questions you're going to find on your end of course exam. When they ask a question about the Articles of Confederation, usually they're about what was so bad, what was so weak about this system of government. So make sure you're paying attention. Now, the first major weakness we're going to go over is the fact that under the Articles of Confederation, the United States of America had only one branch of government. Now, if you can remember, some bro named Baron Montesquieu came up with the idea of 3 branches and separating the powers of your government so that they can check and balance one another. Well, the Founding Fathers thought we won't be doing that. In fact, we don't want anyone in charge of this government, really. Not one person, because last time we had one person in charge, things went bad. So, goodbye, President, and goodbye to the branch that's supposed to carry out the law and make sure people are following the rules. But the Articles of Confederation took it a step further and didn't have a judicial branch either. Now, the judicial branch handles the Supreme Court and other federal courts, and their job is to interpret the law and handle disputes between 2 different states. So goodbye Supreme Court justices and goodbye federal courts. Okay, so if we only had one branch, what did that branch do? Under the Articles of Confederation, we had a legislative branch, and that branch was designed to make and create laws. Now, good luck enforcing anyone to follow the new laws that you've made, or good luck having a Supreme Court interpret that law that you've made and make sure that it's constitutional, but hey, that's the Articles of Confederation. But the weaknesses of the Articles doesn't stop there. Let's take a closer look at the legislative branch, which is also known as Congress. So not wanting their government to be too strong, they also limited the legislative branch, and they made it very difficult for it to create laws, which is the only thing it's designed to do. So under the Articles, in order to make a new law, Congress had to have 9 out of 13 states agree to the new law, which is 70%. That might not seem too difficult, but when you remember how different each colony was, which, by the way, they're now states, they all had their own economies, their own way of life, and they didn't really agree on much. And so getting 9 out of 13 was difficult. And also, just as a reminder, even if they could get 70% to pass a new law, let's say a new tax law, they couldn't collect it because states could refuse, because states had all the power. The Articles of Confederation, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this caused a major problem with funding the military and paying back the country's debts. We borrowed a lot of money in the Revolutionary War, and now we couldn't pay the bills back because we couldn't collect taxes from the citizens. The last point we want to make about the Articles of Confederation were that in order to change the written rules or amend them, all the states had to be unanimous. They all had to agree that this is a change that needed to be made. So that's 100% of the vote. It's very difficult to get. So let's imagine that they wanted to change the institution of slavery. They wanted to get rid of it. Well, in order to do this, under the Articles of Confederation, all states would have to agree to this. So states like Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, all these states that had lots of slaves would never agree to this because it would cripple their economy. And so the institution of slavery would always persist in the United States of America. This is a major weakness to the Articles of Confederation. It shouldn't be too easy to change your rules, but it shouldn't be impossible either. I suppose the last weakness we're going to talk about when it comes to the Articles of Confederation is that the central government was unable to regulate trade between the states. Remember, the central government is really not in charge. They have no power. The states have all of the power. And so the states are going to be very competitive with one another, and they're not going to trade very well with each other. They might have better trade deals with certain states, but worse trade deals with another state. And say Georgia might want to trade with France, and they might have their own special deal that doesn't apply to the rest of the United States. It's weird and bizarre to think of, but the central government was really powerless to make states follow the rules when it came to trading. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, you should be able to answer these 3 questions. 1, how is a confederal government defined? Like, how can we describe it? 2, why did the Founding Fathers want to have a confederation? There is a reason. And 3, can you list the major weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? If you can answer these 3 questions, you're going to do just great on your test. Okay guys, that's it for now. Thanks so much for sticking to the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. We'll make more videos soon.